There's me. I am officially now the publisher, even though that title like gives me major imposter syndrome. But my partner, Christine Newlead, who is also an indie hauler who now lives out of state, this is her. She's the editorial director. She's a totally brilliant writer and editor. And then this last fall, we hired Felicia Casano, who is our part-time publicist. She's in and out of indie hall. She was going to be here today, but she has a cold, so she's keeping the germs to herself. And I also put up like our little mission statement here. We basically focus on finding kind of oddball books that don't really fit into any particular pigeonhole. And we like to say that we're on the intersection of literary fiction and speculative fiction. So we like good stories that are well and beautifully told, but we also really like things like Ray Guns and Monsters, and we think that you should put those two things together really as often as you can. So that's what we're into. Also, you guys have writer friends. We totally have an open submissions period coming up on April 1st. So if you know someone who writes that, please send them to us. We really want to see it. I want to walk you through a little bit about how this even came to be. I met Christine at Indy Hall in July 4.5 years ago, and actually was at Show and Tell. She was giving a presentation about her new freelance editing business, and we just got to talking over lunch and discovered that we had a lot of things in common. We actually got to know each other practicing our Chinese skills over lunch over the course of several months. And then Christine kind of scooched over to me one day and it's like, we should make a book. It would be like a good portfolio thing for both of us. And I mean, here I am. I'm totally naive about books, publishing, the whole shebang. And so very naively, I just said, sure, why not? And as a result of that, we made this book, which is basically reprints of original Arthur Conan Doyle stories. It was right around the time that the 3rd season of the BBC was coming out, so we kind of did like a little companion volume thing. We ran a Kickstarter that actually got enormous support here at Indy Hall, and we found out that it was super fun to make books. So we sort of have kept doing it. This is a cautionary tale about attending show and tell lunch and starting publishing companies. The very first original piece that we did was this one. This is a little novella-length book, which is basically a compendium of creepy made-up diseases. The author is a local physician here in Philadelphia who's a research hematologist over at UPenn. Super fun book. It's been translated now into both Spanish and Italian. Super cool. After that, we made this book, which is, this is the author's line on this book. It's about a character named Prester John. He is immortal. He is 1,800 years old. He just got fired from his day job in middle management, and he's now on vacation trying to decide whether or not he should murder his next door neighbor. I won't leave it at that. It is a really kind of surreal book, so if you like surrealism, you might enjoy it. And it does have like a lot of history about the Silk Road kind of built into it. So it's a fun read. After that, we made this book with our very own Saul Rosenbaum, who is also an indie caller. This is a coloring book full of very delightful and fun images about Space Ranger Zero Darling's travels through the galaxy. Adam over there wrote a great little story about Space Ranger Zero Darling that's right in the front of the book. This was super, super fun to make. I figured that we really should try the whole coloring book thing while it was such a big fad. Really, really fun. And this is our most recent release. This book came out in December, and seriously, I cannot say how proud I am of this book. This is a book that came to us through open submissions, and it's the first time in my life I have ever seen Christine nervous about calling an author to see if we could get the manuscript. And I am like just amazed that Anka was even willing to trust us with this book. She worked on it over the course of 15 years. It's about a teenage girl whose father disappears during the Dirty War in Argentina, and she gets sent away to boarding school in Connecticut. And this book is basically about the summer that this girl spends as a runaway in Brooklyn. It has like a really strong, fabulous component to it. The girl like grows a physical pair of wings over the course of the story. So if you like kind of genre-bending stuff like that, you might enjoy it. It is really well-grounded in historical research. The author spent a bunch of time in Buenos Aires. Really, really delightful book. We're so excited. It's done really well. Coming up, we have, this book is actually out in 6 days. This is our very first piece of nonfiction. It is about doing international aid work in Haiti, and the crux of the book is really about how do we define what it means to be here as opposed to over there, and how do we navigate between those two spaces. Really, really delightful piece of writing. The author is a total sweetheart. She's going to be here March 29th to do an event, and I have some more information about that later. And the last one, this one is like another very indie hall project. Many moons ago, Adam came and told me about this Victorian era book that there wasn't a nice edition of. And The King in Yellow is written by this guy named Robert Chambers. He was one of the antecedents for H.P. Lovecraft. He kind of started that whole like Victorian horror thing where we don't quite tell you what the monster is and just sort of imply that it's there. And this edition of the book is illustrated by Mike Jackson, who is also an indie hauler. This is going to be officially out on April 10th. We're going to be having a party down at a really cool little nerd bar in South Philly. We want you all to come. We're super stoked about it. We also have a really exciting fall catalog coming up. We have 3 books that are going to be out this fall in September and October. The first one, Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark, is about a superhero in the Midwest. It's basically a satire about this black superhero. Really delightful, fun novel. We also have 2 that are still with working titles, which will probably change. The Cure is about 2 sisters who grow up together in a mental institution, and it's about their eventual escape from that mental institution. And then the last one, Live, Laugh, Languish, we actually just signed the contract for this last week. And it is about a vampire who runs a suicide hotline. And I was so stoked about it because it's so smart and so funny. So we have a whole bunch of cool stuff coming up. A couple of events that I would really like to invite you all to. We're doing a panel discussion at Rosemont College about this book, Maps Are Lines We Draw. The author is going to be there, and we've invited a number of people from the Haitian community in Philadelphia to come and join that conversation. It's going to be March 29th at 6:30, and it's going to be in the Rotwit Theater, which is a really beautiful space on the campus at Rosemont College. We would love for you to come. Facebook event is probably going to go up today, so I will kind of share that around. And we also really, really want to invite you to this launch party at Black Cat Tavern in South Philly. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've already roped Adam into reading some from the text, and Mike Jackson's art is going to be up there on the walls. And another indie hauler, Troy Morris, is bringing his giant collection of board games. So we're going to kind of like have a board game party in the afternoon, and that's going to kind of like merge into an art show and happy hour deal later in the evening. So please come. We would love to see you there. That's on April 7th, 4 to 8 p.m. Come for as much or as little of that as you like. And there's one other thing that I wanted to sort of talk about, and that is like, I get a lot of questions. People ask, how can you support like indie publishers or indie authors? And I have suggestions. If you find a book that you really like or an author that you really like, this applies just universally. There are a lot of things you can do to help that book make it. Requesting copies at your local library or at your local bookstore, that's like a huge, huge deal for us. Suggesting it to your book club or recommending it to family and friends, also really cool. And we love it when people say hello to us on social media because we very rarely have the opportunity to interact with people who are actually readers of our work. We often we interact with like distributors who don't have the same perspective as readers, and we really like to hear back about our stuff. And you can always, of course, review it in various places like Amazon or Goodreads or on your own blog. Like, if you really enjoy something that someone's written, any of these things are deeply appreciated by authors and publishers. And then lastly, if you want to know more about us, you can find us on the internet. We're at lanternfishpress.com. We're also active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at LFP Books. And we have a regular monthly newsletter. If you're interested, I do have sign-ups, so you can also sign up on our webpage. So I'm going to pass this around. You can put in your email address, and then you can click the second field there, and it will give you a choice of which newsletters you'd like to sign up for. So if you're a writer, click the one for authors and writers. You'll find out about our submissions window. If you like the Victorian literature thing, we have a separate newsletter for that. We have like a generic monthly newsletter. You know, like if any of those things are of interest to you, sign up and come say hi. And I guess with that, I will answer people's questions about book things. Alisha.
I have many questions.
Okay.
And thank you for doing this work, first off. It's a really exciting story that you met at Indy Hall, and you involved Indy Hallers in the making of books too, which is great. 2 questions. One, what do you use to export to EPUB? And the Kindle, like, what's your relationship between, like typesetting, InDesign, and Amazon, like, rubbing that? And 2, how are you finding, like, the business model? Like, is there anything that's surprising about it? Are you able to make your full-time gig? What would you say to others who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to make publishing my full-time job?
Yeah, so if you want to make publishing your full-time job, there is this saying that the easiest way to make a small fortune in publishing is to start with a large one. That is 100% true, and we've been fortunate enough to have like enough capital to let us try this out full-time for a while and see where it goes. A lot of folks that I know have gone with a nonprofit model to be able to apply for grants and things like that. Lots of folks are making it go full-time that way. But the short answer is, like, book math is really, really terrible. So just for those of you who don't know, the cover price of a book. When you look at that number, you should recognize that right away that 50 to 55% of that amount goes to either the bookstore who's actually retailing at the standard discount for them is 40% off list price. And then a portion of that, usually 12 to 15%, goes to whoever is distributing it. After that, you have what is actually spent on the cost of printing. Like right now, we are all print on demand, so our print costs are actually relatively high. Hopefully we'll be able to transition to offset runs here soon, and the margins will get bigger. After that, typically 8 to 10% go to the author in the form of royalties, and then whatever is left after that, and personally, I'm happy if it's like $1 a book, that is what pays the publisher and like handles everything from like the cover design to the typesetting to like all the things that make a book. So when you look at the cover price of a book, like there's a lot of people who go into that, and book math it's terrible. It's really awful. Back to your first question about EPUBs. If you want to chat in this in more depth, I would love to, because I am the resident like EPUB person on the team, and the workflow for creating EPUBs is god awful and totally miserable. I am self-taught. I've like just figured it out with Google. But basically what I do is I wait for a book to come back, at least from the copy editor, because I don't want to have to make a whole bunch of changes in HTML later. And I basically export it directly from InDesign into a reflowable EPUB. The first thing I do is I delete the entire style sheet and reapply all of the styles. I have a standard style sheet now that I use. We do not do any embedding of typefaces in our EPUBs anymore because every platform basically has their own encryption deal. And like, for example, our print-on-demand provider who also distributes our ebooks, they will just delete the encryption file, which puts you in violation of all of your typeface EULAs. Like, it's bad. So mostly we do it with lots of pain and time.
Would you be open to doing another session sometime about like all the tech that goes behind publishing a book for online resources? I think that probably, a lot of folks make intro products here, so that would be really useful.
Yeah, I'd be happy to like teach a little workshop on EPUBs if people are interested.
Does that include like making an ebook?
Yes. Okay. So there's 2 major formats basically for ebooks. There's the EPUB format, and then there's Amazon-based formats of various kinds, usually as a Mobi file. Actually, switching back and forth between those is not so bad as trying to create the initial version in the first place, which is usually an EPUB.
Okay.
But because all of these platforms, all these pieces of hardware have their own eccentricities, you tend to kind of produce with the lowest common denominator and like hope for the best. It's rough.
That's about all the time we have for this presentation because we're stacked. But Amanda is around today and
Yes.
always.
Yeah, and they're like 3 days a week, so if you have questions about publishing their books or stuff, like, come find me. I'm totally happy to hang out and talk about this stuff.
Mike, we had talked, if you want to go there, and get you situated up. Yeah, yeah. We can pull up that website for you.
Me too.
You can pull it up from there. We can keep the camera view, or do you want to share the screen?
I think camera is probably okay.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Okay. Awesome.
All right. Hey everyone, my name is Mike Wilner. I'm brand new to this community, so I'm excited to kind of kickstart things with the show and tell. For some quick background, I spent the past 3 years building a startup here in Philly. I am now a startup consultant and a freelance startup consultant. And one of the projects I'm working on that I'm pretty excited about and want to share a little bit about today is building the Soloist Collective in Philadelphia. So I'll dive more into what that means. But I figure I'll just give you guys my backstory. One of the reasons I wanted to present today is because I feel like I can be a resource to a lot of people, but I'm new here, and so I wanted to give more context on kind of where I've come from and what I'm doing now, so that if there are ways I can help anyone, you know how. So 3 years ago, I moved to Philadelphia. I was starting an idea called Compass, which was a freelance web design marketplace. So we had a bunch of freelance web designers and a bunch of small businesses, and we facilitated web design projects. So started that here in Philly, raised some money, and then we started to build it out. So we built it up to a team of about 5 people, and we were growing pretty moderately. Then we raised more money and grew up to a team of 9. So over the course of 18 months, we had experienced a lot of growth here in Philly. And around March of 2017, so about a year ago, we were growing really fast, and the business model kind of collapsed just because building a marketplace is really hard, and we struggled to do certain things right. So we actually had to pivot the business, had to do a round of layoffs, which was not fun, and start a new product, which was called Sale, which is a client billing software for freelancers. So we had spent so much time dealing with freelance web designers and understanding how hard it is to manage the business side of things, so we started building software that helped with the back office. So about 2 months ago, we actually sold Sale to a product shop. So it's still running. Alex, I don't know where he is still a user of Sale. But yeah, so that happened around 2 months ago, which basically brought my 3-year journey of building a startup to a close, and I became a freelancer. So it was interesting that I spent 3 years working with freelancers and then became one. So what I've been doing a lot of now is helping first-time founders and startups navigate some of the early stage issues with building a company, whether it be raising money, making early hires, and things like that. So I've just kind of started doing that. I'm not yet charging for those services because I don't know how I'm supposed to do that yet. So if you know any startup founders or anyone trying to raise money, I'm very willing and able at this stage to just talk to people and have good conversations. But once that all closed down, I started talking to one of my friends who had started a company in New York, and they were building something in New York called the Soloist Collective, which is an independent community, or a community of independent professionals in New York, all helping each other grow their solo businesses. And he was telling me a lot about what they had going on there, and in like a very short time, they had created 10 local chapters in New York with over 1,000 members. And so I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I've been working with a lot of freelancers in Philadelphia over the past 3 years, and I said to him that, hey, like, this should exist in Philadelphia. So what I've been doing over the past 6 weeks is taking the Soloist Collective, which I'll share more about in a second, and seeing if we can do what they've done in New York in Philadelphia. So one thing that I think is really cool about the Soloist Collective that made me very interested in it was the person who started it actually worked for the Obama campaign in 2012 and has a background in community organizing and political organizing. And so the approach they've taken with the Soloist Collective, rather than like a top-down community, is creating local neighborhood chapters. So like in New York, they have like a Park Slope chapter and an Upper West Side chapter, and it's all very grassroots. And so, as I mentioned, I started this 6 weeks ago. The response has been really good. We actually have 6 chapters in Philly now. So we've got West Philly, Northern Liberties, Fishtown, Rittenhouse, Queen Village, and as of today, Old City. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on. And you know, a lot of what we've been doing is basically kicking off these chapters and finding people to lead these chapters locally. So you know, what I'll share here, rather than having to puppet this, I'll just kind of show you guys the Philly page because it does a good job explaining like what this is all about. So this is kind of like one of the mantras of the Soloist Collective: independent, not alone. The Soloist Collective is a community of independent professionals supporting each other in the pursuit of successful solo careers. I'm not going to read everything verbatim, but the value props of it are, you know, you have meaningful connections. So, you know, I think obviously you've all done an incredible job of this locally in this space. A lot of what I've talked to Alex about is figuring out how to like tap into the broader Old City community, because there are independent professionals that are not necessarily here that may do a variety of other professions. Valuable advice, obviously, that's something you guys are familiar with in this space, is helping each other with tips of growing your business. And this is one of the things that I think is really cool is, like we now are going to have an Old City chapter. We also have chapters across other neighborhoods. I've been going to all these chapter meetings and realizing that there are people in separate chapters that should be talking to each other. And then, of course, we got all these chapters in New York that have started. And so you kind of have these 3 levels of community. One is like super local, Old City. One is regional with Philadelphia. Then you have the national community of the Soloist Collective. It's all kind of growing at once, which is really exciting. But yeah. And in terms of the neighborhoods, you see we have these neighborhoods: Rittenhouse, Queen Village, Old City, West Philly, Fishtown, Northern Liberties, and actually Collinswood, New Jersey, just over the bridge. So those are the chapters. People can start new chapters if there's like a neighborhood, if you know someone that lives in a neighborhood that's not here, whether it be like Point Breeze or something like that. You know, all of these are led by people that are not me, except for Old City, that have stepped up and said, I want to lead a chapter here and start a chapter here. We just crossed 100 members in Philly, which is exciting. So there's definitely some momentum building. And here are some of the leaders. We've got Melissa Alam in Fishtown, John Cordone in Queen Village, Serena Scanzillo in Rittenhouse, Greg Goodwin in Northern Liberties, Sarah George in West Philly, me in Old City, Andrew Marson in Rittenhouse, Anna Westman in Queen Village. I think she might even be at the home. Yeah? Yep. And Beth Lawrence in Collinswood. So yeah, so this is kind of what we're doing, and you can see we have a bunch of upcoming events. What chapters end up doing is they have one chapter meeting each month as just like the baseline where everyone comes together, introduces themselves, there's usually new faces, talk about what asks they have of the community, and then just like mingle and build relationships. And then some chapters will sprinkle in other events, like they're not up here yet, but there are 2 happy hours for next week that are scheduled, just providing more opportunities for people in the neighborhood that are independent professionals to come together, meet each other, help each other out. A lot of times, like, these are people that are working in the same coffee shop, but don't realize they could be helping each other. So the key is to kind of get everyone together in the neighborhood. But yeah, that's basically like what we have going on with the Soloist Collective. We actually have, oh, it's right here, the Old City chapter kickoff, which is today at 5 o'clock over there. So if you're interested in joining the Soloist Collective, or like learning about this chapter and what we can do here, then it's going to be over there at 5 o'clock. So, yeah, I want to leave more time for questions. So this is the Soloist Collective. It's gaining momentum. If you guys consider yourself to be a soloist, which is just like someone who does what they love and works for themselves and serves clients, or you know someone who is and thinks they'd be interested in what we're doing here and getting value out of the community, yeah, we'd love to talk to them. So with that, I'll just kind of stop and we'll have questions.
I have two.
Sure.
For the New York chapters, have they expressed gaining support from the Freelancers Union, which is headquartered in New York?
Yeah, so not really yet. They're kind of operating in parallel.
Okay.
Freelancers Union is a little bit more of like a union and like an advocacy group. They do have some local communities, like there are like Spark chapters.
Okay.
But this is mostly about like just like bottom up in like soloist run communities.
Okay.
There's not like the Soloist Collective provides some structure and just like infrastructure to help people get things going. But the key is that like, so in chapter meetings, for example, it's up to the chapter to decide who wants to present.
Okay.
Right? Whereas with Freelancers Union, like they have like more regimented programming and stuff like that. So this is a little bit more of like a hyper local community.
Okay. And my second question is, what are some of the frequently asked questions or challenges that you now see
with the Soloist Collective? Yeah, I think like
from the people that are, entrepreneurs or startups?
Yeah. So like about what to get out of the Soloist Collective.
No, just like, do they come with, have you noticed a trend in like, oh, these are the commonalities of like everyone is struggling with this in order to grow or
Yeah.
business?
So I mean, and I've worked with freelancers for a while, so it's like
Right.
some of the same things I've seen, which is, a lot of people want to, find new clients or market more, right? I think one of the cool things about the Soloist Collective is it absolutely prioritizes referrals as like the way that a lot of soloists grow their business. And so by bringing people of diverse professions together who have diverse networks, and like building true relationships, not just like a BNI group where it's like everyone's selling, but like actually building relationships, it allows people to like find new partners and things like that. So that's part of what the Soloist Collective is trying to solve for, because that is especially when people are starting out on their own, that's one of the biggest things they say is like, I love doing my craft. I don't really like sales as much.
Yeah.
And I need to figure out how to do that.
It's in advance of the program question, but I'm thinking about how all the neighborhoods on here are places where there are a lot of young professionals, probably a lot of small businesses, and like I guess the models we start them off like all over the city where there were good people, but there may be like sort of benefits to joining the old city one or the city one, for like networking.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any barrier to people joining one where they don't?
So we haven't like had much of that happen. Right? Like people are not necessarily encouraged to float, because you get more value, and this is what we talked about in the chapter meeting. So you get more value from building real relationships with people, and that like, consistency is required rather than just like being a new person in a new chapter each week or whatever. I think one of the things that's really good about the neighborhood specificity is it's really accessible for people, right? So like I think of certain meetups in Center City, which is like, let's say the Rittenhouse area, which is like a really dense area of a lot of professionals and stuff. If you're in Fishtown, it's kind of a pain to be like, okay, I'm going to go into Rittenhouse. Where if it's in your local coffee shop, it's something really easy to just do after work. So I think convenience has been a good thing for people to make it so easy for them to get involved. I think what we try to push is the importance, like benefits of being local. And one of my responsibilities, especially as things get going, and we have 6 chapters in Philly, and that number's going to grow, is figuring out ways to connect different chapters, right? So if there are people that could benefit, like someone in Fishtown and someone in Rittenhouse or Westfield, if they could benefit from meeting each other, like that's kind of that second tier of community, and we would want that to be strong enough so that people don't have to like cheat, right? Like if there are valuable connections to be made, the hope is that we're able to, through creating, whether it be like a Philly-wide Facebook group or something like that, or doing, chapter meetings every month, but then having one like Mixer or something where the chapters can come together. Hopefully that would like allow people to realize that they can kind of have their cake and eat too, with being invested in their local chapter, but also meeting people. It's a good question.
So that's about all the time we have. Where can they find you later today?
5 o'clock over at the lunch tables. So. Cool.
Alisha, Pam, you look at it.
Yeah. So how do I connect or not?
Right over here.
Or log in to the computer?
What do you have as a presentation?
It's just
Sure. Do you have an HDMI port? You want to send me a link?
yeah. Or
Yeah. You can log in for here.
or actually
If you can log in right here, you've got a open Chrome browser.
That's fine. I don't want to. Gotcha.
If it reminds people to go to now, then it's doing the trick.
Okay.
So instead of Zoom link, in the browser. Should be able to do that. There. Cool.
so I want to talk about my anti-research this year. So I'm just going to arbitrarily scroll through pictures from Peru.
Yes.
So the order in which they go in. How much time do I have?
10 minutes.
So I went to Peru this year, and it was my third anti-winter trip. So anti-winter is that, so I'm originally from Kentucky, but I moved to the East Coast after college, and like I thought, oh, I'm living in the Northeast. Surely I will embrace the love of winter and get into winter sports and things like that. And then I ended up in a career where I worked on the internet, and I realized that was stupid. And so I decided that louder. Oh, okay. So I decided that. So it was actually when I was working in my first anti-winter was when I was working in my corporate job. I just kind of told them that I was going to go to Belize and work from Belize. So that was anti-winter number 1 in 2015. Because Belize is an English-speaking country in Central America, so like easy mode. But this year I went to Peru. And so the requirements for anti-winter is that it must be warm. I generally go to South America because of time zones and costs. It's just a lot easier to just keep doing my job when the time zone doesn't change.
and most of South America that's friendly. Peru is in the Eastern time zone. That's mushrooms to ceviche. That's a random cat that someone handed to us on the street. And all of the drinks are pisco and all of the food is vegan. So South America for time zones must be easy. The travel buddy, so I travel with a travel buddy, generally for anti-winter. It's like it, someone's looking after you, someone expects you to come home at night, but they must work. I don't travel with someone who's on vacation because I am working, I am not on vacation. So it's a short-term living situation somewhere warm. So to that degree, oh yeah, and like this year I went away for 3 weeks, and I think that's about my max for about how long I want to be away from home. It's just a long time to like be away from your family and friends, or for me, it's just like friends. But that's the great thing about winter is that you disappear for 3 weeks in February, and people sometimes don't even notice because they weren't doing anything in February. So 3 weeks in February is generally my target because it's usually about the time of year when I'm like, this sucks, like really badly, and I think about moving. So in terms of things that went well for anti-winter this year, the food was all really good. The cost was fantastic. Peru was very inexpensive. Freaking love Peru. Would love to go back. It's always a trade-off because like I really kind of just show up, and like Peru was picked from my travel buddy Serena. We will see a photo of her later because I'll talk about my hike a little bit. But Serena wanted to go to Peru, and so it's like because I'm like my requirements are that it's warm and you know that I can afford to live there for a few weeks and not really impact my budget that much. And Peru works really great for that. Oh yeah, there's Serena. She and I met in New York in 2015. She's Italian but lives in London, but not really anymore. But yeah, so we went to Peru. Things that and the internet was good. That's always a risky thing. You don't know how the internet is in other places. Things that could have gone better. Since this anti-winter, I was traveling with Serena, who generally just speaks English, or you know, me, I don't speak Italian, and she doesn't really speak Italian anymore. I would have gotten a Spanish tutor to give me a reason to go outside every day, because I would sometimes get like just start like wake up and eat breakfast in the apartment and start working. It would be nice to have had some kind of routine that got me out of the house every day and also gotten better at, like, spoke more Spanish, because my Spanish still just continues to suck. Our apartment was also kind of a greenhouse, and there was no really way to deal with that, but it would just get really hot during the day. You know, alternatives to that would have been better. And also my travel buddy's job kind of exploded while we were traveling, which that kind of messed with one of my core tenets of anti-winter is that the person must work. Her job was like they were a startup and they were like, oh yeah, where we thought we had money, turns out we don't. So she suddenly was, you know, trying to figure out if she had a job anymore. So that was ideal. But yeah. I just kind of wanted to do a show and tell because like I kind of do this and I wanted to like force you all to look at my trip. So yeah, so these are all from the Perucation part. Oh, I went to Astrigasan. So there were a couple of highlights in the trip that were so Astrigasan, Lima in Peru has at least 3 of the world's top 50 restaurants. And Astrigasan is one of them, and I did a tasting menu, and it was 19 courses, and I did not take pictures of everything, except just like the first drink I got at the beginning, because I was so overwhelmed with how wonderful everything was. So it was a very expensive, very wonderful thing to do a tasting menu. That was why I knew that was not. And this is Central, which is the number 5 restaurant in the world right now. And there's Lima is the only major South American city on the ocean. at least on the Pacific Ocean for sure. So I could go and look at the ocean every day, which is really nice. It's kind of misty. Oh yeah, the other obvious thing about anti-winter is you go to South America because it's summer. So summer in South America, that's kind of serious where it turns out. Cool. So we've exhausted that. That's the Peru-cation part or the workcation part. And then the other thing I did was because honestly, like I feel like I would be perfectly content to go to South America and hang out for 3 weeks and work and then come back because I really just want to live somewhere warm. Like that is really honestly my top priority. Other people are kind of judgmental of this and like, so I take a vacation while I'm there. So vacation was I went backpacking on the Falcante Trail, which is so Machu Picchu's in Peru, which is a city of ruins. And the ways you get to Machu Picchu, it's pretty remote. So you go to fly into Cusco, which is about 3 times the elevation of Denver. It's a multiple of elevation of Denver. And so you're at this altitude, and then you can get there by bus, an extremely expensive train that doesn't run in the off season, which is the off season, the rainy season in the mountains. Or you can walk there. So we walked there. And so the Falcante trek takes, it's a 5-day trek where the 5th day is when you go to Machu Picchu, and you do Machu Picchu, and then you go back to Cusco via a bus. That's how we did it. So you start, so this is my packing layout. This is a cool backpacker thing I like that people do. Those are coca leaves, which are legal in Peru. It's not, you can chew the leaves and it helps with altitude sickness and the nausea and that not very fun stuff that happens. I did get really bad altitude sickness, like not, I just got altitude sickness at all, whereas Serena got absolutely no altitude sickness and is taller than me. So in terms of us walking together, that made things complicated. So I'm just gonna do the same thing essentially. This actually Serena threw her pictures of this album too, so like I'll get to see these things. But like it was great but also terrible. A lot of terrible because I had, you know, I was suffering from altitude sickness and turned out that my you only find out your rain gear whether or not it's actually waterproof when you're walking in the rain for 6 to 8 hours. So it turned out mine wasn't. Spoiler, so I was very wet. Let's just skip to my favorite selfie. Oh no, this one's really good. Pretty great. This is I look not altitude sick there, right? But yeah, there were some beautiful, it was really freaking pretty, but like also that Serena does owe me because I was like, I come for anti-winter and this is where we are. And this is our Serena's friend Bill, who is our person who like knew what he was doing and made sure we didn't die. Like, oh yeah, this is my favorite stuff from the trip. This is I'm walking, like I'm hiking in the rain wearing basically a trash bag because there are a few. Oh yeah, this is one of the many we had to walk across. There's lots of mudslides. Just don't do this. Just don't hike this trail in the rainy season. There's a reason why you don't do it. Because like there were mudslides everywhere. We actually had to run across a rock slide. Like the rock slide had just happened and we had to run across it because like it could keep falling. But if we didn't run across it, it might be blocked and then be extra blocked. So this is where we forded a river, and Serena had to look up what the word forded translates to in Italian because she hadn't heard that word before. So we had to take off our shoes and walk in the water to cross the water. Because this is actually we had to walk on a road because the trail had too many mudslides. So there were like so many mudslides where I did die. Oh yeah, a dog peed on my backpack. Like that just sucks. Oh, that's Serena. That's a majestic chicken. Yeah, so that's, yeah, I have the 10 minutes, so any questions about things? Yeah.
I've done this as well.
You done South Africa?
No. This like anti-winter.
Okay.
I just call it a sabbatical. The last time I did it was 3 weeks between Buenos Aires and Uruguay.
I would highly
recommend
for anti-winter
Cool. I would highly recommend Uruguay if you really enjoy Latin America. They're like the English is really good. Money wise, you'll be fine. The Montevideo, which is the capital city, you'll be super cheap. If you also go, I went in February as well. My birthday's in February. I can't stand it, and the weather is shit here. But if you go to the coast of Uruguay, that's when it gets expensive because of the tourists from Brazil and Latin America. But anyway, I just would recommend Uruguay. I've written about it, so if you're interested, I'm happy to send you that. I did it all on a budget, which I wrote out this is how much I spent.
That this year. I did that when I did Argentina, but I totally skipped the budget, and I was like, I'll just see if I'm broke afterwards. And
that's why I did the post to see if I was on budget. And this is interesting because Peru has been next on my list.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, it's so cheap. This is I set money on fire to go to Astrid and so on, but honestly, other than that.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
I highly recommend more women do this.
Just saying, Uruguay the only place in the region you can get it working.
Oh,
Uruguay's the best. Let's just say
Is that like an anti-winter thing? Or?
Uruguay's the best.
I've tried to work remote in Puerto Rico a few times. Most of the places I rented just weren't that cozy for
Yeah,
working.
don't go to my motherland. That's not good.
It's the apartment.
Yeah, what kind of places did you rent, and did you find places that had good workspaces there that were somewhat cozy?
Yeah, so that's where I should have done more research in terms of there's co-working spaces everywhere. So when I was in Buenos Aires, I actually did work out of a co-working space somewhere here recommended. It was a mixed bag. But the restaurant, I did work out of restaurants a couple of times, and the internet wasn't so great. It was mostly just a change of pace. My apartment was by far my best internet. And I think that Airbnb nowadays has better filters on, high-speed internet, and we'll look for that in reviews. I'm also really kind of bad at looking for housing, so I usually have my buddy do that. So Serena did that, and because she travels a ton, and so she has a really good place with solid, really, really solid internet. Both of us could be on video calls.
Yeah, don't go back. Our infrastructure is there, but Colombia I would highly recommend because it's really strong.
Yeah, a lot of people go to Medellin.
And I've done that. I've also done it in Colombia for the same amount of time. It's only gotten better. And also for better.
Going to Costa Rica or Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Cheap.
Yeah, cheap, but the question is the internet.
I think Costa Rica.
No, the internet is. I would agree with that. My friends usually go to Costa Rica for 3 months.
Okay.
I agree. Internet in Nicaragua.
You agree with internet?
No, I have good internet in Nicaragua.
You're I agree. Who's there?
I agree. Internet.
Serious, when you said Central America, I was like, Kansas? Pretty good internet there.
Oh yeah, on the hike also we did just so you don't think I'm too badass, we did ditch the hike from a couple of sections and take buses and then just sit in hot springs. A thermal hot spring that overlooks the Andes Mountains.
So cool.
And Bill, the guy, he was there oh, I'm only gonna be here for half an hour. So we're we're gonna be here for 5 hours. We're just going to sit in hot water until we feel better.
So were the trails quiet?
Yeah, it's pretty quiet, but I would say that the Southern High is definitely getting more popular as a trail. So you kind of end up with trail friends. We had trail friends, so we hiked with these guys from Georgia for a bit, and then there was also a tour group. But other than that, that's a sum total. So we did see them because we were doing them days, but yeah, we're.
Thanks, Dan. If you want to travel to Peru, talk to Pam. There's also a travel channel on Slack. I don't know if everybody knows that, but we just show the travel. No, it's called hashtag travel. And there's lots of folks in the community that love to travel. So if you're looking to work remotely somewhere, that's a great place to start. Or post a group us.
Alisha, do you have any AV stuff you want to
Yeah, I could just put up my website.
Cool.
That's the only thing.
Type in your website. free like that. And then we can use the camera so we can see you.
Okay.
And whenever you're ready.
And I have to talk loud, right?
Yeah, that
Yes.
puck microphone is what's picking up.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm Alisha. You may have seen me around. I run a site called Alisha in the Biz. It's a site that I've been running for probably 10 years now. I talk a lot about my life and career. And in December of last year, I started a new series talking about unemployment. And the reason I started doing that is because I am always unemployed. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and I decided I want to dig into this a little bit more. And I also had a friend who, her and I were the only two people ever to be fired from the same place. She approached me around this time of year last year when I got fired from said place and said, hey, you really helped me when I got fired in terms of like negotiating my severance, collecting unemployment. We should come up with like a checklist for people so that if and when this happens to someone else, like they'll be prepared for it next time. So we started brainstorming and came up with like a list of, I think 20 to 25 things, kind of like action items and tips that I realized in discussing unemployment with a lot of my friends and even family members, like people just don't know, like some of the most basic things, some legal things people just don't know. And I thought, you know what? I've been unemployed so many times I've lost count. I probably have a lot of lived experiences that I could share. And the other thing that I did in terms of diving deeper into the topic was I had been, reading about unemployment, and especially as it relates to myself and other people my age who graduated 10 years ago during the economic crash and how that's affected our careers and our lives, particularly with job instability. There's a lot of factors that go into how you might lose a job. And what I have learned throughout the years is like, a lot of it has nothing to do with you. A lot of it is out of your control. Budgets change. Businesses shift their goals. You get hired by someone that doesn't know why they hired you, or they change their mind. There's 1,000 different things that could happen to you and that can affect the situation of when you may lose a job. Certainly, there's also like, you could be somewhere really toxic and someone hates you and there's nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of it that goes into it, and I thought a couple things. One, no one talks about this. Like, it's embarrassing if you're like, I got fired, or I got laid off, I got terminated. People tend to be really shy about it. They might feel ashamed. They might feel embarrassed. It's certainly stressful because immediately you're like, what the fuck am I going to do for money? Where do I go from here? And I wanted to basically put out an open book to say, you're going to be okay. You are not alone. And there's so many other people that have gone through or will go through these things that there's a way for you to pick yourself up and make your next move. So what I decided to do is kind of break down this unemployment guide into kind of a couple phases that will walk people through each stage of unemployment. So the first one is like before it happens. So I talk about like warning signs that you should look for. Things that you can do if you're employed right now, like what could you do? Something that I talk about is like how to back up your work, like protecting your work, looking at those NDAs that you may have signed, saving money, which but it's not about not buying a latte every day because I still buy it and I'm broke. It's about being smart with how much you can spend every day and therefore how much you can save. I talk about money a lot as it relates to your work and your profession. And fun fact, I saved the most money I have ever saved while I was unemployed 4 years ago. So you can do it. The other section is if and when it happens. So if you get the notice you're being let go, what do you do? Like literally, what do you do in that room when you're being told you don't have a job anymore? Like poker face, do you cry? Do you have a meltdown? My number one tip for that, which a lot of people I've had to walk through and yell at,
do not sign anything they give you right then and there. You have a legal right up to 21 days to review any paperwork they give you before you sign, seal, and deliver it. Also, you can negotiate for severance. Ask me, I've done it, I will help you. The third part is like during unemployment. You're unemployed now, what do? One, apply for unemployment. It's free money. It may not be, it probably will not be the amount of money you made in your salary or your regular rate, but it's something. Collect it. It's not that bad of a process. I've done it now in 2 different states. It's fine. And then the last part is, after you've been employed, now what do? Like, what is your next power move? Do you make a career shift? Do you go back to doing what you were doing? I like to take those, times in my life to kind of reset. I think I've made a career shift every time that I've been unemployed, and I also do take a travel sabbatical to just like reset my mind, and those have been the most helpful for me personally. So like I mentioned, in 2015, I took off February. I had just gotten laid off for the umpteenth time in New York. And I left to go to South America by myself, which I do often. It was the best. And I basically gave myself an ultimatum, like, do I want to continue working and living in New York in this career? Or has New York finally kind of broken me and I should just move on with my life? And sure enough, by the end of that trip, I was getting that feeling like, dear God, I don't want to return back to New York. I'd love to stay here forever. So that was my sign that I needed to leave. I ended up here. Most recently, when I got unemployed 1 year ago, that is when I decided, after looking at my past kind of roles and responsibilities, like, hey, I would be a really good project manager. And so that is when I decided to research what would that look like in terms of making that career shift. I was really fortunate that last year when I got terminated, I had a really healthy savings account, and so I had the luxury of taking about, I think, 5 months pretty much off. I didn't, do any freelance work. I completely invested myself in the community with Ben, who I now work for, kind of. So it was really great. And in the last year, it's been kind of funny, like the amount of messages, texts, emails that I get from friends of friends who are like, my boss is angry at me and I think I'm going to lose my job. What do I do? And the amount of moments or calls that I have to walk people through tells me that this kind of information is still valuable and important. So I'm going to be publishing a couple more posts as it wraps up this spring. And the goal really is to have some kind of actionable item, actionable tips that you can literally do right then and there. I would really love to see this series expand. I have a couple of ideas. One would be turning it into an ebook. That's why I was asking about that before. 2, I would really love to have more events where we speak about this. And then the third piece is actually I'm working on trying to get insight from the opposite perspective. I mean, someone who's in charge of HR, someone who's in charge of hiring and firing people, to get their perspective about this topic. What I would love from all of you is feedback. You can go to my website. I created a bit.ly link so you can see the full series in the archives. It's bit.ly, so bit.ly/millennial job loss. I would love for you to poke around. I would love feedback, positive and negative. If there's something that you feel like is dicey or you're like, ooh, I don't know about that, please let me know. If it's really helpful, even better. I would love to start collecting testimonials if anything that I've written about this topic has been helpful to someone. I know, personally, probably 10 women that I've helped in the last year get through one of these situations. So I really want to be able to collect testimonials and be able to pay it forward. And of course, share it if you find it valuable. Share it with your friends and family. The last thing I will say is that in addition to the actual content that is written here, I've been filming videos. So I have been hosting Facebook Live videos. I've done 2 so far. They're actually recorded here in Indy Hall. They're just an hour long where basically I expand on each topic more, and I kind of approach it with an ask me anything kind of style, meaning people that are following along with the video can stop and ask me any question, and I will answer to the best of my ability, of course, through my own lived experiences, but any research that I've done. And if I don't know the answer, I will absolutely then research it and try and get back to that person. So the next Facebook Live I am working on doing by the end of this month, if not early April. And then there are also like short little video clips that are kind of like, they condense each blog post into like a 30-second video. And those are produced and edited by fellow Indy hauler Kaylani. But yeah, so those are the things that would really help me like move this guy further along. And that is, I think, all I have. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
What was the hardest part of starting this with a vulnerable expose into something that's not
Sure. If you know me, I'm an open book. I talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, so I don't have a problem putting myself out there. My perspective is the more honest and transparent I can be about my career, especially my failures. Like the approach that I have is that it's going to help someone else learn from my mistakes. I think what I was more fearful of is like a former employer being like, how dare you talk about us that way? It has not happened yet. I have not been sued. I don't mention any former employers. I'm sure it's easy to find out who these people are. But that was like my fears, like someone's gonna be like, she's trying to make money off of the situation, but it hasn't happened, and that's not my intention to, drag these people. I'm really just trying to turn a negative experience into something positive. So.
It's really cool that you're doing this. I don't know anybody else who talks about this. Yeah.
Well, I'll probably be unemployed again soon, so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been 10 years worth of like writing and researching this stuff. There's actually a really fascinating article that I think has been the best article to summarize what I thought. I was a crazy person. I was like, there's got to be a reason why I can't keep a job for longer than 2 years. Oh, it's the economy. Cool. Huffington Post started like a new vertical, if you will, that's called The Highline, and they came out with an article right when I started this series in December called FML, and it's a very, very, very long read, about an hour, but it's one of the coolest published pieces I've ever seen that goes into the economic crash of 2007, 2008, and how it's, affected millennials in every way, right? Everyone's heard it. Can't buy houses because you're buying avocado toast and can't keep a job. But it really was helpful for me to read it and be like, oh shit, this is why I can't do these things. Like there's actually hard data and research and reporting that kind of validates all the things that I've been experiencing. So any way that I can back up my lived experiences with something that has been deeply reported and researched, I think obviously helps legitimize the topic and the experience, but also puts things into perspective.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone for coming to Show and Tell. We do this every third Thursday. We also have spots available for next month. So if I know Kodo's doing one, I think, or he looks scared, so maybe not. But if there's something you want to talk about, whether it's your work or just a hobby you're loving or a trip you went on or something you just want to share, we'd love to get to know everybody. Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Do you have a name?